Hi guys, it's Taylor. Yeah, I am going to be reading a book to everybody on YouTube. It's called Dancing Shoes by Noel Streatfield. And I'm going to be posting 28 videos referring to the chapters. There's also a movie, you might want to check that out too. I haven't seen it. My mom's getting it tonight, so I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm going to be using British voices for the characters because they're all British in the story. And you'll understand why if you pay attention. And I'll write the chapters in the description box if you can't understand what I'm saying. Okay. This is chapter 1. It's called The Dancing School. The School of Dancing was in North London. Outside looked just an ordinary house, rather big perhaps for the shabby neighborhood to which it belonged. But it was anything but ordinary to the neighbors, who knew that in it were trained Mrs. Wintill's little wonders. Cora Wintill had danced on the stage. She had never got beyond the chorus, for though she danced well, she did not have a good figure, nor was she pretty. But she had loved the life and had found it hard to give it up when she had fallen in love and married an artist called Tom Leno. Tom was a good painter, but a poor earner of money. Tom and Cora had been married about a year when they had a baby. She was a little girl, and they christened her Dulcie. It was after Dulcie was born that Cora saw that if she was to bring the child up properly, she must have more money than Tom was likely to earn. That way was when she had her big idea. Why should she waste her dancing talent? She was getting old for coursework, and anyway she would not be away from home, but why should she not teach others to dance? Cora was a person who usually by determination got her own way. If she had not been that type, she never would have gotten to any chorus, for she was usually turned down at sight. But she had refused to be beaten and had worn managements down by her persistence until they had said, "Engage Cora Wintill. I'm tired of saying no." The dancing school had started 2 days after Cora had first thought of it. She was out shopping with Dulcie when, a mistake, she pushed the perambulator, a stroller, into a passerby woman, not at all young, but fat and cozy looking. The woman run right her way straight to Cora's heart, by not at all being angry about the stroller hitting her in the stomach, but instead being rapturous about Dulcie. "Oh, what a little love," she said in a warm, pretty voice. "I've looked after a baby in my time, but I never saw a prettier." That conversation led to a cup of tea in the shop. There is nothing like a cup of tea for telling things. In no time, Cora was explaining about Tom not earning much, and her dream of a dancing school. "I was well trained myself, and I could see any child that came to me was well trained. I shall call myself Wintill, my last name, as that's how I'm known in the theater. Tom won't mind." The stranger, whose name was Miss Purser, then told Cora about herself. "I've been a children's nanny since I was a slip of a girl, but now, provided I can be with children, I might give it up. My ship's come in to speak, so to speak, only I wish that it hadn't the way that it has. One of my babies, the Honorable George Point, was, maybe you read it in the papers, eaten by a shark he was." "Goodness," said Cora, "a shark, just fancy, and him an honorable too." Miss Purser shook her head. "No respecter of persons, sharks aren't. Well, when the will was read, it was found he'd left his old Nan a little money in a house, bless him. In North London the house is, not a nice part, and a great wreck of a place." The idea hit them both at the same moment. There was Miss Purser, with a house suitable for a dancing school, and wanting to be with children. And there was Cora with training to teach children to dance. Why shouldn't they not become partners? A few months later, Cora moved her family and Miss Purser into Miss Purser's house. Cora put an advertisement in the local paper. "Cora Wintill, teacher of children for the stage. Classes daily, 67 Ford Road, Primrose, 150. She showed the advertisement to Miss Purser, whom by then she was calling Percy. "How's that, Percy?" "Very nice, Mrs. Wintill. Now, I do wonder who your first pupil would be." It was not a pupil who first answered in the advertisement, but a theater manager who had liked Cora. Except the Cora Wintill who was on tour in my Sparkles company. Cora said it was. "Well, I saw your advert, and I'd like to do something for an old friend. Next summer I shall want 12 kids for a show I'm touring on seaside towns. You going in for troops?" Cora was not a person to let an opportunity pass by. The manager was speaking. She could see troops of children trained by her dancing all over the country. "I certainly am. What are you calling them, dear?" There was a tiny pause while Cora thought hard. Then the answer came to her. Mrs. Wintel's Little Wonders. In 10 years, everybody except Tom had stopped calling Cora by her Christian name. She was Mrs. Wintel or Mrs. W. wherever she went. The school was a great success. The Little Wonders were known to everybody in the theater world, and they had appeared in films and on television. When school started, Cora had been the only dancing teacher, and Percy had done everything else in the house. But soon there were two other teachers beside Cora, Pat and Ina, and Percy was supposed to be only the wardrobe mistress and to employ the matrons who looked after the children when they were working. Actually, Percy never was only the wardrobe mistress, for she went on being the person everybody, staff, children, and Tom, came to whenever they wanted something, were unhappy, or had a worry. Being the owner of the successful Little Wonders troops changed to Mrs. Wintel. There were plenty of other schools training children for the stage, and Annette pushing harder than anyone else to get her dancers known. A person who spends all his or her life pushing to get to the top gets tough as a result of working so hard. This happened to Mrs. Wintel. She became a rather frightening person. In fact, sometimes people said she had a stone where other people had a heart. There was one person who was not at all afraid of Mrs. Wintel, and that was Dulcie. Dulcie took after her father, who was good-looking, with gray green eyes and dark curly hair. And from being one of the prettiest babies Percy had ever seen, Dulcie grew up to be a noticeably lovely little girl, the sort of child people turned to look at in the street. Of course, the moment she could toddle, she had learned to dance, and so by the time she was 10 and a half, she danced very nicely. Unfortunately, Dulcie was very conscious that she was an outstanding child and did not try to hide it, and so it was a great trial to the rest of the school. Behind her back, the children had called her Little Show-Off and that awful Dulcie Pulsey, and the staff called her Mrs. Wintel's Little Horror. But of course they had to be nice as they could to Dulcie's face, for none of them dared quarrel with Mrs. Wintel. One evening early in March, when dancing lessons had finished for the day, Mrs. Wintel came into the room, Percy used as the wardrobe, looking very unlike her usual calm, hard self. "I've got to go away, Percy. Tom just had a phone call. His sister-in-law has died." Percy laid down a pink frock on which he was working and made sympathetic clicking noise and, "Oh dear, very sudden, isn't it?" "Yes, it was an accident." Percy tried to remember the little she had heard of the Leno relations. "Aren't there two little girls?" "Yes, about Dulcie's age, Rachel and Hilary. That's why I'm going. It's so tiresome, but it looks as if we may have to bring Rachel here. We have no responsibility for Hilary. She is an adopted child. I shall arrange to have her sent to a home."